This meeting is being recorded.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our second episode. I wanted to give us, to start out, a little bit of a map of where we're going. We are going to go talk a little bit today about Scott and my journeys with depression and anxiety, a topic that's not always talked about a lot. And then we're thinking about, we'll see if we get all the way through depression and anxiety today. We're thinking about maybe going some other directions off of that. And as always, let us know what you think. We're thinking about 25 minutes. If you guys want more content, please let us know. But Scott, I'm wondering, where should we head today, or where should we start?
Well, buddy, I was hoping that you'd start us today and just your journey, man. And when you finally discovered that, man, this is what I'm dealing with, because it can be a confusing thing to figure out. So
Yeah. So I think that's really a good point, Scott. I think one of the things that I noticed the first time I really struggled with depression was when I was in my early 20s, and it was over a breakup. And the thing I would say is that I just didn't know what was going on. And some of the things that I experienced, I kind of wrote down some of those. I had a lot of physical pain. So I was in psychological pain because I was going through a breakup, but I had a lot of physical pain, a lot of rumination. So I kept thinking about the breakup over and over again and how it was my fault. I had some racing thoughts. I had low energy, low mood. I also started drinking quite a bit. I think one of the things that I needed a way to cope with the intense experience that I was having. So my drinking increased. Also, I think this is really important for men too. When we think about life, I kind of started to feel a little bit hopeless and not having a lot of meaning. I think for men, it's really important to have a direction. And in my mind, it was to date this girl, to get married, to have children. I was very much at that time bought into the idea that with my spiritual beliefs, my religious beliefs, that this was all part of a plan that had gone really wrong and that I had caused it. So I think as a male has been taught to be really tough and to hold things in. So I felt really disconnected from myself. So just an absolute kind of numbness is the way that I would say that at 25 years old, I was confused, I was scared, and I was really kind of low mood, and I couldn't get myself to function really.
wow. Hey, Jocko, a couple things when you said that. Isn't it amazing? I was writing a couple notes down. The similarities between me and you, when it's my turn, there's a lot of similarities already. But did you feel like, hey man, well, you kind of said this, but I think this is the part where guys really struggle is, what do I do with this, man? You know what I mean? You feel that way. And so what do I do with this? Well, you said you started drinking more, so you were trying to do something with it, bury that. And can you even go even further, a little more into that? Like well, I guess this is why anxiety and depression can go hand in hand, but you and I talked about, man, these are different, like the word depression, it's, depressed, pushed down, right? And so do you remember, like, physically, how did that play out? How did that feel to you?
Yeah, I mean, I just had like just weird episodes of pain, whether that be headaches, like back stress, and just physical pain all over my body. And that's not uncommon for men, right? Like, men are really, we're built different, and that's not a good or bad thing. But I think we hold a lot of our stress in our bodies, and we're not able to often put language to what we're experiencing. So I couldn't really put language to what was happening to me. And I knew I wasn't myself. And I was also isolating. So I wasn't talking to people because I was ashamed. I had this image of this person of who I was supposed to be that was no longer there. and I couldn't make sense of that. And I couldn't accept it in any way. And so I think it kept me in that loop. And I define depression as this idea of often ruminating about the past and this other idea of being a distorted emotion. I wasn't feeling full sadness or anger or upset. I was feeling depressed, but there was no way to really, I was so numbed out that I couldn't really put language to it. And so it was really scary because I thought that something else physical was happening when in fact I was just experiencing depression at a significant level for the first time in my life.
Jocko, and so when the breakup, which is like a doorway into it, now that you reflect back, did it go any deeper for you? Did you discover anything underneath that that came up too? Stuff from a younger day? Did it bring up some of that?
Yeah, and I think this is a good, this will go into an episode we'll have on relationships, but I had been taught that relationships go a certain way. So the tools I had weren't very effective in relationship. And it was a really high stakes deal for me. I pursued this person for many years. And then I got into the relationship and I didn't have the skills. And for me, what I equated to be love or connecting with somebody was not what this person, in a more healthy person would have wanted. So not only did I have this ego in this false self, right? I also didn't have the skills. And one thing that I really talk to a lot of my patients and clients about is relationships is all about skills, right? It's about conflict resolution. How do you have a conversation? How do you have empathy? How do you get along? And I didn't have those skills. And so really it brought to light as I got older and I could look back that I had a lot of skill deficits, and not necessarily my own fault, right? It was just the family that I grew up in, but I had a lot of work to do to get better at being in a relationship too. So yeah, that's a great question, Scott.
That's all I got on there, buddy. I really appreciate you sharing that, because the fact of this, that you saying that alone is gonna, I know some of these guys on here, that just gives total freedom to say, wow, okay, I'm not alone. And these other dudes have dealt with this, and because they're in this group. I mean, the feedback I'm getting, the guys are struggling in these areas, depression and anxiety, not knowing the difference. I really appreciate you. Share this real quick, Jocko, because you really described this pretty, well, it helped me when you described it this way too. And I fully see it this way as well. Explain what, you said it, but say what depression is again and what anxiety is again, where they're kind of focused.
Yeah. So again, often depression is rumination about the past. You're kind of caught on this cycle and it just keeps going and going about the past. Again, it's a distorted emotion. So it's often hard to really name what it is. And I also think one thing that we haven't talked about is often depression comes in a few ways. Sometimes it's like an event, a situation happens, but also it can be a low-lying thing, right? Often with men, especially we're talking about men in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, we often get isolated, and lack of connection can also be a cause of depression, I think. And I'm realizing I didn't answer your question, so I'm going to.
No, you did. No, you did, because then really what you did, you talked a lot, and then so basically the anxiety side of it is which isn't this episode, but just so guys understand how similar but different they are. It's anxiety focuses more on a fear of the future, the unknown, and so but you see the difference. One is in the past, one is in the future. How about a dude that gets both of them going? You know what I mean? And you wonder, like, wow, now we've got, and that's a lot of people. That was me. So that's, no, you did answer it.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it is just that low motivation and low energy, right? You've lost yourself, right? You don't seem to be yourself. And I have some other ideas about what men looks like with depression. And this comes from the Mayo Clinic. Often they'll engage in escapist behaviors, especially spending more time, at work or sports. So maybe pulling away from your family system. We talked about physical symptoms such as headaches, but this is another one, digestive issues, right? Often digestive issues is a symptom of depression. We talked about alcohol and drug use. Why? Because that releases dopamine and serotonin, which makes us feel better in the moment. But we also know that alcohol and drugs are often, depressives. And so they make it worse afterwards. And they also mess with your sleep, which you need to feel better. This is a huge one, and I don't know what you think about this, Scott, but irritability, anger, those are a couple of ways that depression come out as well.
Yeah. Doorways that happened for me that were like, whoa, what's going on here, dude? I totally get that.
And then lastly, I'll say like risky behavior, such as reckless driving, big time risky motorcycle driving, skiing, jumping out of airplanes, things that are just not normally within your scope. Men tend to go to those types of things. And Scott, I'm wondering, how about you? Are there things that you've noticed that how depression maybe presents that are a bit different than the way I've described it?
No, buddy. I mean, that's why I wanted you to go first, because I just knew you'd be able to put more of a perspective on some things so these guys can understand. And with me, this is the big key. And you said it about you. I didn't know I was depressed. So I knew I was effed up. You know what I mean? But I didn't know I wasn't going to tell nobody that. We talked about in the last episode. So the cover up thing. Well, when the things started getting uncovered, what kind of things happened for you? The breakup. For me, here's the irony of that breakup with a gal, where I took it really hard. And then I looked back and I thought I take these things hard all the time. And it wasn't that I didn't care about her. It just, I really, for the first time, thought I'm taking this way too hard. Man, like what's going on? So that was an eye opener. The second one for me was getting married. All of a sudden I got this gal in my life, a beautiful wife, and is it okay to not have things not okay? Like that concerned me, man. And then the birth of my kids was a real doorway into this, because then you start hearing all the talk, about genes that, I had a family member say to me one time, hey, it's in the genes. Depression's in the genes. Now, there's some truth to that. And maybe write this down, and you can go this way a little more professionally than me. But I wasn't buying that, and I'm glad. I know there's truth about genes, but I felt the hopelessness there. It's like, dude, you got no choice, man. And that's not true. Biology and new experiments prove it. The book by Bruce Lipton opened that up for me, The Biology of Belief. It didn't downplay that, yes, you're more prone, and this is where you might have to put this in a better word. You may be more prone to that area in your life, but your environment activates those proteins that activate the genes. You know what I mean? Epigenetics, or those terms, so that was in play. And so I started digging, man, and I just wasn't okay. And then how it felt for me, Jocko, was to try and describe it. I described it like it was a sadness for me. So what's neat is that you're going to see you and I are different human beings. So this thing masks itself in different ways in different human beings. And for me, I can describe it. It was like, because of the sadness, I shared that with you, but it was like, when you stand on the beach and then all of a sudden the water comes up to your feet real quietly, and it doesn't do anything. It just, the tide's coming in, the waves are coming in a little bit. And the next thing you know, it's up to your ankles, but it's not all that, it's not uncomfortable, but if you stay out there long enough and then you start to feel the power of the water, now it's up to your knees and thighs, and it has some control over you. You know what I mean? And that's what the sadness felt like. And where I really knew it, and I thought, I gotta dig into this. And it was so hopeless, buddy, because I never knew about anybody talking about this. If I could have been seeing a podcast like this would have helped huge for two dudes to say, hey, dude, there's nothing wrong with you, man. Yeah, you're a little messed up. I shouldn't say, yeah, there is something wrong with you, but there's hope. I mean, everybody, and excuse my language, everybody, hopefully you realize you're fucked up. at some point, you know what I mean? So you can start to heal. Because everybody is to some degree or another. It might not be this, but they might not have any of the past stuff dealing with depression, but they might be full of anxiety day to day. Well, I was lucky; I had both, you know. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I think you bring up
that's
something
how
really, really important, Scott. Sorry to interrupt you, but we
no,
talked
go
about
ahead.
this a bit this week as we were kind of prepping the idea that often depression will tune us in, that something needs to be looked at, right?
Absolutely. You and I talked about it like the engine on a car, right?
Yep.
Hey, what's this light, man? This check
Yes.
engine light. Well,
Yes.
see, I think depression has got a bad rap. I really do. And let me finish that.
Sure.
Everyone wants to fight it. Like I hear these things like he's fighting depression. Dude, you're fighting. Don't fight that. I mean, you have no chance, dude, when you fight it. It's not an enemy. It's a check engine light, man. It says check your engine. So take your car into the mechanic and say what's going on. Well, you explain, man, there can be a lot of things going on. You talked about diet. You talked about those things, man, that it's like it could be the seven-headed dragon, right? I mean, but it's not to be fought. It's to become aware of. And you said that through, like, you can become aware of that over a breakup. So the breakup's good.
Yep.
Feels like shit,
Yeah.
but it's an opportunity to go in there. Hey, man,
Yes.
something's not right. Hey, Jocko, you handled this breakup. It rocked your whole world. Same with Scott. Well, guess what? The check engine light just came on, dude. And it's been on for a while. How about the dude that doesn't even go in, just keeps running his car, man? And I always thought about that for me. Like, it's like driving your car. Not acknowledging this is like driving your car with one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake, man. Dude, that's no bueno, and that's not going to work out good, right? And so,
Yeah. I mean, I think it really, now that you say that, like, as men, we often just keep going, even though the check engine light is on. There's something really wrong. But for me, depression was a pointer to having to start to deal with my childhood, have to deal with relationship issues. But it was one of the greatest experiences of my life to have to go and start working on it. And I did it with a therapist for 7 years, right? Guys are probably falling out of their chairs saying, like, Jocko went to a therapist for 7 years. This poor lady had to listen to me for 7 years, all my stuff over and over again, the rumination, right? All those sort of things. But it was part of my awakening experience, was to step in and say, wait a minute, the check engine light is on. It's time to start to look at this. And I think that changed everything for me.
wow. You know what, Jocko, and that gives guys courage to say, dude, it's not just okay to go get help. It's necessary. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. That's why you and I think I wanted you to come into this with me, and because you bring the professional element of being an active psychologist, seeing people as we speak, trying to help them sort through stuff. And you know what amazes me is, you talked about the male thing. You know what? It's not about, and of course, I'm glad I'll be the cusser and swear, but the difference between me and some people is that I just know I'm fucked up, man. And that's okay, dude. I mean, it's like, I'm on my way to freedom. Like, where did that stuff, this phony, this fake, hide this, hide that? I just didn't want that. But see, I didn't know. And so I didn't realize how good this stuff was. Like I said, depression got a bad rap because it's a check engine. Like, dude, there is something not right under the hood. For me, I'm depression free today, Jocko. I might have an episode here and there, but I'm able to identify that. Now, it took time to develop, as you said earlier, the tools, which we're going to go over, not today, but on other days. We're going to give guys hope. Hey, here's some tools. And you're awesome at that, buddy, of saying, here's some tools, dude. Some guys don't even have a tool belt from growing up. Some have a tool belt, can't put the tools in the tool belt because they don't have the tools yet. Well, and then there's dudes, no belt, no tools. And I think I was one of them guys. And so to be free of depression today, and then know when I might have some stuff come up in my life that makes me emotionally want to go there, like a sadness, I'm able to nail it right away and say, nah, man, no, I don't need to go there. For me, I'll be honest, you know what it was, Jocko? My depression side of it came from, you and I talked about, I had some trauma in mine, which we're not going to get into that, but we will not withhold the dark stuff. Eventually, Jocko and I agreed, so you guys know, we're going to share some pretty dark things down the line when the time is right. So guys that are in those places, dude, we've been there when the lights are out, man. I mean, there's nowhere, you cannot even feel your way around the room. I totally get that. But I just say, like, mine was family. Mine was, I wanted to be in a, I guess as a little boy, I must have, and it took some time to find this, you guys, but I so bad to want to be in a family that mom and dad were there, and there was stability, and there was, and that's not how it worked out, man. I didn't realize, Jocko, how much of an impact that had on me. So I depressed it.
Mm.
It's all I knew how to do,
Pushed it
because
down.
I didn't have I was a little boy, man. I don't have the tools. And then I repressed it, you know what I mean? And we won't get into, so I pressed down again. And so that was that's how I was trying to survive. Depress, repress.
Keep pushing down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Scott, I'm noticing we're about out of time, but I want to make sure I touched on a couple of the questions you asked. One of them was, is it biological? Is it, nurture? And I think this goes to your trauma, bringing up trauma, which I think is really important. Yeah, I just encourage guys to not judge it, right? Just to let it be what it is, right? Some evidence suggests that it is biological, but according to a lot of models, it's called the stress diathesis model, which means you might have the gene or propensity for depression, but some event has to turn it on, if that makes sense. So that's one of the ideas. But here's the other part that's crazy. Humans are so complex that we can't study this in isolation. We could also argue that it's your family system of depression behaviors that is being passed on generation to generation. So it could equally be something what we call not nature, but nurture, right? So it's really hard to pull those two apart because humans are so complex. So I think it's probably a combination of both. And also, it's just so guys know that, depressive episodes can last a month, they can last 2 months, or they can last years. For me, my first depressive episode lasted about 2.5 years. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to scare anybody out there, but I didn't have any of the skills. I didn't have the tools. I had to learn all of that sort of stuff, right? And so just so you know, it's often, some people have what's called seasonal affective disorder. They get depressed in the winter, right? So there's some evidence that that's a natural cycle of life, actually, in some ways. So we're going to talk about some of this in different perspectives. But one thing, again, in conclusion, I don't want you guys to judge this stuff, right? Because one of the things that we often do is judge our feelings. And depression is about a part of being of life. And hopefully it's pointing you to something to look at. And it's natural, it's normal, and it's something that's very treatable that we can give some, hopefully next episode, give you guys some ideas here.
Awesome, Jocko. I'm looking forward to this journey, buddy.
Okay, awesome. So guys, we're going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for tuning in again. Let us know what you thought of the content. If you guys enjoy this, again, we want to keep doing this. Like our YouTube page and follow us. And please feel free to share this with other guys who might find it helpful. And next week, we'll come back and we're going to talk a bit about anxiety, a little bit about why that's different than depression. So hopefully you guys will join us for that episode.